Hello, everybody. Welcome to What the Frick Live. I'm your host, Emily, and I have Mr. Will Martinez with us tonight. Thank you, Will. How are you doing?
Good evening. Hey, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back on. How you doing? Sorry I was missing last week. Was not feeling well, so I'm sorry I missed you guys.
Well, we are certainly glad that you are feeling much better now.
Thank you. Yeah, back on the horse, as they say. So all good.
Yes, I missed you so much. It always throws me off. I was like, what do I do?
I know.
It's like, always go to Dark Fringe Radio. What's he doing over there? Speaking of that, tell us what you're doing over there at Dark Fringe.
Always stuff going on at darkfringeradio.com. Check us out there. We just are coming out with a new episode tomorrow, actually, with Christopher Macklin, and he's a psychiatrist, and he basically we discuss aliens, ETs, but he is on more of the being able to recognize these aliens, these actually nefarious aliens, and being able to take them out of people. So basically he does like this healing technique, and it's a really interesting conversation. I really implore everybody to check it out tomorrow. But it's a really interesting conversation with this individual who really can thinks he can really manipulate these beings out of you and take them out of you, and it's really, really interesting conversation. So check it out, darkfringeradio.com.
Is that like a demonic thing then, or?
There is a little bit of spirit because he is also a minister. So there is a little bit of that involved, but it's mainly being able to figure out which entity is in your basically body by using frequencies and resonance, harmonic resonance. And so that's how they're able to kind of like, remove these beings from your body. But it's really cool.
Well, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to be checking that out too. So darkfringeradio.com, or go follow on Facebook too at facebook.com/darkfringeradio. So thank you, Will, for being back. We're so happy that you're feeling better. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble this evening. So please, please, please give us a heart. Make as many comments as you can. Share this out. It keeps us in the algorithm. Everybody knows how much we fight shadow banning. My Instagram, does it exist? I don't think so. People try to look me up, and they can only find my back.
I see your stuff. I see your stuff all the time on Instagram.
Well, look me up, and they can only find my backup account on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Which only has like 200 people. So you can't find me on there. But please, heart, share. If you're watching my Rumble, give us a positive thumbs up. It'll keep us in the algorithm over there. Plus, I got good news with What the Frick Live. We have a website. It's kind of long. Right now because
I like it.
But I'm going to have that shortened here soon. I'm just testing this out to see how it goes. whatthefricklive.my.canva.site/whatthefricklive WTFrick. So if anybody's listening, go over there. If you want to be a guest on the show, please go check out our website, messages on any kind of social media platform, and we'll try to get you scheduled in. So, April's most haunted month, and very, very excited about our guest tonight.
Yeah, me too.
We've had a lot of people on. We've talked about these battlegrounds in America, Gettysburg specifically, and some of the forts. What's that fort down there in St. Augustine? Macon?
Well, you got no. You got Fort. Man, it is on the tip of my tongue.
People talk about that one a lot.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, St. Augustine. That one's. Is it Fort Matanzas? No,
It's
I think it
something.
might
It's
be.
something M or something. I can't
No,
remember.
no. The St. Marcos. St.
That's it.
Marcos.
St.
Yeah,
Marcos. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But Gettysburg and all these battlefields that's happened, and even Washington D.C. I think of Washington D.C. too when I think of military. But
yeah.
when I started researching this, I wanted to talk about a battlefield or possible hauntings, but I didn't want to bring in somebody that we've always talked about these subjects before with other people. So I typed in current military experiences now, and this is literally what I put in Google, not Kandahar Giant, because we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, we have talked about the Kandahar Giant
Yes,
before, but yeah,
yes.
that's another thing. Yeah.
And so I came across this young man. He's still active military too. I believe he is. I'll ask him when he comes on. But Nick Orton, he's the mastermind. I'm calling him the mastermind behind the Tales from the Grid Square. He has volume 1, volume 2, all kinds of true stories from the military, talking about crypto, paranormal, and aliens, and all kinds of stuff. So UFOs. Let's bring Nick onto the show right now. Hello, Nick.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I gotta say, the intro, I was not expecting that. That was pretty cool.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's all Emily right there. That's all Emily.
Thank you.
Yes, we are live, by the way.
Yes, we are live. So hopefully hopefully you can join in and ask questions to our guests too, because we will take your questions. We might not get to it right now, but we'll get to it, I promise. But Nick, thank you so much for coming on with the Frick Live. I truly appreciate you coming on and telling us your story, your background, and what got you started in this, which we'll get to all those questions. But are you still active military?
I am, yes.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for your service.
Thanks for the support.
Yes, and, we love our troops.
For your guests, that's why I don't show my face, not because I just prefer to remain anonymous while I'm still in.
I totally get it. Yeah, man. Yeah, I get it.
And people will think like it's because there's something secret. No, I'm actually pretty boring in real life. I'm just some regular guy in the military. But I just prefer a little bit of privacy,
Yeah. You don't need the extra attention, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I get it.
Well, we appreciate you, and what you're doing is absolutely amazing and very different. And I can't find anybody else that's doing what you're doing right now. And you're taking these stories that the military, all branches of military, correct? That's submitting stories to you.
Yeah, pretty much anyone. I even take stories from non like United States sources within reason. And people are like, oh, how come you always put military, American stories? And I'm like, well, if you know people that are in, Britain or Canada or places that I want to share, let them know. I guess the only issue is I need to know their language or English. That's the language barrier can be kind of hard.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm having a malfunction over here. When we start talking about this, we're bringing in other countries now, so who knows what we're going to know. I'm just kidding. So Nick, I've listened to some of your podcasts and everything that you've been a guest on, and every one of them was pretty interesting. And since this is the first time that you're on What the Frick Live, I do want to ask, which is the same old question everybody starts out with, but is how did you start with these stories? What was your experience, and what made you think, hey, I want to write 2 volumes of Tales from the Grid Square?
Oh, yeah. So I guess it kind of as a kid, for a while, I'm what, 30, 31 right now. As a kid, I have always had an interest in the paranormal, kind of all the fringe stuff, like legends and ghosts. I don't know if you guys recall, for a while there was a show called Weird US on History Channel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that was 2010 era, maybe. But I remember they had books for every 50 state. In every state I lived in or visited, I tried to get that book so I could learn about all the legends and stuff like that. I still have them actually at my house, my parents' house. I ever since a kid, I love this stuff, from Bigfoot to UFOs, giants. I read Communion when I was a young kid. And of course, I was like, oh, cool, an alien. I want to read the book, because I was a little bit of an advanced reader, like I could understand words, but maybe not understand like themes and what was going on. I must have been, I can't remember. I was young, but I saw the book and I was like, of course, didn't understand anything what was going on. I was like, oh, cool. It's an alien on the cover. It was like in the used bookstore. But that just goes to show like that's how interested I was in like kind of learning about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so you personally, though, you had an experience yourself, though, in the military that led you. You're interested in these topics and everything, but you also had an experience that led you to possibly, creating these volumes.
I mean, if I was to be honest, it wasn't exactly like an experience that was like a great revelation that was like, I'm gonna do this thing. I had like 6 beers one night and I was like, I should start a page where I collect like military ghost stories. So it was literally a drunken idea, and I'm very open about that. Now I have had I have had experiences in my life. I always tell people it wasn't like it was like some great revelation. It was literally I had 6 beers. I'm like, this sounds like a great idea. And then I woke up the next morning. It was like, okay, what am I actually gonna do with this? Mm-hmm. But I've had some things happen in my life that I now attribute to maybe like possible paranormal events, like living in some haunted houses, seeing things that I know wasn't normal, having people back up like the same things I was experiencing with what they were experiencing. And then just in the military, there's like legends everywhere you hear, and people whisper about them here and there. Cause like most people don't want to like be considered crazy, but a lot of people like the topic, just like there's a lot of people that love the topic of the paranormal. And inevitably, people share their weird stories and encounters and stuff like that. And, eventually like further down in my career, I did have some weird stuff that had happened to me. It wasn't exactly like super exciting. It wasn't like, I had a ghost come up and scare me in the face, but it was something that was weird enough. It connected to somebody else's experience. Yeah. All my drunken ideas have been terrible ideas.
Been there too.
Usually mine too. You're not alone in that one.
but yeah. And it was like, just the fact that I had my experience, which was in my opinion, fairly boring, connected to somebody else's who was a little bit more exciting, just got me thinking, and like I started digging from there and looking into like where we were and like finding out that there's like all sorts of stories associated with this place, and then there's all sorts of stories associated with the different bases I had been stationed at and lived at, and like the local legends and stuff like the Kandahar Giant. And it was just a huge can of worms that led me to my drunken idea of starting Tales from the Grid Square.
Go ahead, Will.
Nick,
do you have any thoughts?
Nick, yeah, absolutely. No, Nick. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome that you're curating these stories, which is amazing in itself, right? And you're getting these stories not just from people that are just on the fringe or whatever. You're getting these reports from people that have verified backgrounds. People that normally would not subscribe to the things that probably they're talking about, right? Usually, or you would normally find in that community. But was there like ever a time where you were in the military where you were like, maybe you guys like went to a place and it was like something that was something happened there and nobody really talks about it, like not even like the commander or whatever, but it's just like, okay, yeah, you don't, or a place that you would avoid maybe or stay away from because of maybe something that you guys heard or things of that nature? Has that ever happened?
I mean, like not to me personally. I've definitely recorded stories. Now I've definitely can tell you if there is a place that looks creepy and like, oh hey, don't go in there. Soldiers are gonna find a way, and Marines will find a way in because they're bored and they want to go do something.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a book, The Militia House. It's a haunted house book, fiction, and it's literally that is the catalyst of the story. Is a bunch of bored Marines go visit a haunted house, and things get out of hand quick. A really good book, by the way. It's a pretty good one. Anyways, but for me personally, I've been to places that are fairly creepy. I can personally say I'm not exactly that guy that is like the magnet for the paranormal. So if I go, I'm usually like a spectator to these things. It doesn't directly happen to me. If I go with people, like, for instance, I have some close friends that are that typical person that, you know, has all these insane hauntings happen to them. Like it's getting pushed around and talking and like, you know, seeing like full on apparitions. Usually that's, I'm like caught in the, you know, the backblast or the what's it called? The crossfire of the paranormal experience. In fact, I was on a tour with my brother, who is one of those individuals, around last Christmas, the Mysteries of Hawaii tour in Honolulu.
Oh, yes.
Which is fantastic because not only is it extremely creepy, but it's also extremely fascinating to learn about like the history. It's part ghost tour, part history lesson. And there's some really fascinating history, but I digress. So I went to a place that I've been to dozens of times on this tour. And, you know, part of the tour was that I was asked to take a couple pictures of these trees, and I was with my brother, and, you know, my brother, we took the same picture of the same tree, the exact same time, almost like down to the second, because we checked the timestamps, and I caught something that was normal, like looked like a normal tree at night, and he caught something that looked like there was like an apparition or something in the background. It was pretty creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so, you know, that's go ahead, Emily. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. No, we'll go. I talk a lot.
Well, no, that's interesting. That's interesting that you caught that, and you know, of course, that changes your whole, I'm sure, you know, frame of reference when you're thinking about the paranormal now. Has there been a story that you curated from someone in the military where it sounded way too much, like it was just like way out of hand?
Oh, you mean like something I would think it would be fake, or?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've gotten plenty of those. I typically don't post them, or if I post them, I just want to see people like tear it apart. For the most part, I won't. But because like I am definitely within that generation that was terminally online, especially where when I was younger, you know, didn't have really much. You know, for the lack of better terms, was in a place I couldn't, not in jail, but I was practically in jail. Like I could leave, but I could leave if I wanted to, but I wasn't allowed to for the longest time, just due to the pecking order of things. But I, you know, I was always online because it's like the one place I could go was online. As a kid, you know, like, so like I got to be very familiar with all of the creepypastas, and like, you know, I was a big lurker on Reddit No Sleep for the longest time before it became kind of more of a fiction site. Back then, that's where it was kind of like a tamer version of the true Paranormal King at the time, which was 4chan on X on 4chan.
I just made a comment on that 4chan. That's me. I was a 4chan clan.
Yeah, I was a lurker on 4chan. A lot of the things that people are mainstream, like skinwalkers and you know, all the stuff, like, listen, I was there when they posted the alien picture on X, and the whole website went down for like 2 days.
Right.
And the whole thread got deleted. Or like the other insano things that were posted on there. And I've actually ran into people and spoke with people who shared their story. They're like, yeah, I shared this on X, and it was like verbatim what was on X. Like their story hadn't changed. And like, we're speaking this in person. And you know, it's very fascinating. But you know, nowadays, like, it's the paranormal has become more mainstream, and it's kind of been a little diluted with people trying to make it like with like content and everything like that. But yeah, like, you know, there's some stuff that people have sent me that I like instantly recognize as some of these creepypastas. Or you know, I'm not very like, obviously I don't show my face. I don't like to call myself an influencer. But like, I'm very connected with a lot of people behind the scenes. And there's people that have told me their stories that other people have tried to pass off on their own, almost to like, to a T, haven't changed like the details at all.
Wow.
So, real quick, Nick, then, so do you vet these people? Do they have to be military based then? Do you make sure that they are involved in military?
I mean, like, I try to do my best due diligence. A lot of the times I have to like kind of accept their trustworthiness at face value. Most of the times, if it's really fake, and I like some things, like if it's army related, I can vet it more easily. But if it's like Navy, maybe I don't really understand, or certain communities, right? Certain lingo and language they use, and maybe that's not something I fully understand. So it'll just eventually get ousted in the comments, which has happened before. And then I go back and look, I'm like, oh, okay, now these details don't make sense. Or, there's also like tropes. Like I always tell people, if somebody tells you a story and they found giants in Antarctica and the 75th Ranger Battalion was sent in, like there's like the Rangers are always, if you go look at all these like paranormal stories online, the Ranger
first
Battalion,
ones
they're always like at the center of it, and it's hilarious. And I know Rangers, and they're not the guys. One, they're too busy, and two, like if Rangers kill Bigfoot, they would probably have like its hide tacked on the wall somewhere in a team.
Right, in some museum, right? Absolutely.
Mike Harris is on here too. Mike's a good friend of mine. Well, husband to my good friend Melissa. And Mike, we appreciate you tuning in. But the Navy's a whole different animal, and that's true. Marines, all of them. I think they're all different in some kind of way.
They are.
They all have their own different cultures and languages and
absolutely.
isms.
So is this something that kind of bonds all those different divisions of military together in some ways, Nick?
I feel like it does in a way. People like, whether they like to admit it or not, like to read up on like paranormal stuff and ghost stories and things like that. And especially when you get locations where there's people of all walks of life and all, parts of the military experiencing the same thing. Then it's like, now this is common ground. Like if you see a ghost in, say, I don't know, like Fort Drum, you see a ghost in building 127, and somebody else on the comment was like, yeah, I saw that exact same thing at this time. And it's like, now you get this like sense that you're not alone in your experiences. And the way I have it set up with like people just send me their stuff and I just, compile it and post it, it allows people to share experiences and be anonymous. And so when people say like, oh, they're sharing this for clout or, attention, and it's like, well, if you don't know who they are, like, what do they have to gain from it? If they're not like, hey, this is my story, look, most people won't, there's really nothing to gain. That's kind of like my first, like, kind of like vetting thing. It's like, well, if you're making stuff up, it's just really for your own internal giggles, like nobody knows it's you unless you want to oust yourself as it being you. And then thus, if it was fake, and people would call you out because they may know you. But yeah, no, I think like it brings a lot of people together because they love talking about these subjects, and like people I think actually have more experiences than they care to admit, or easily they just hand wave stuff off.
Now, your dad was in Vietnam, right? Was your dad in Vietnam?
Oh, no, not my father. No.
Oh, not your dad. Okay. I thought I read somewhere, or maybe it was a story on one of your grid squares that you posted here lately, Vietnam, something about Vietnam. But so do you get these older gentlemen, veterans? Do you get many? I know my dad's not on social media. He's supposed to be watching tonight. So, Dad, I love you. Thank you for your service so much.
Hey, Dad. Thank you.
Yes, he's supposed to. I sent him everything. My mom's supposed to be setting it up. He's very excited about this. He had experiences when he was in Vietnam, but I'll just say Vietnam was a whole different breed of war, and there was a lot of acid. And I don't know what goes on over there now. There still might be acid. I don't know. A lot of beer, a lot of alcohol involved. So he always plays it off to them, but it's still stuff that sticks with them over time. And he's talked about these stories from time to time. So he's very interested in tonight. Do you get a lot of veterans that reach out to you, say around my dad's age, late 70s, mid 70s?
I think I've gotten a few people. I think like the biggest thing is the communication barrier because it's mainly on social media. But I would love to try to get more. I've tried to reach out and I kind of get stopped. Not stopped, but what's it called? Stonewalled.
Stonewalled.
Like I think like one instance I found a veteran that wanted to, that had a story about rock apes in Vietnam, which is like another legend. And like I tried to reach out to this other website and, hey, can I speak to this individual? Like I would love to just interview him myself. And they kind of like, whoa, gatekeep me from it because it's that's the other thing about the paranormal world is like everybody's like so easy, like
a lot of
to,
gatekeepers.
like, yeah, like for the most part, other podcasts have reached, like, oh, I don't want to share this with you. I'm like, okay, why? I'm like, oh, well, they'll make up excuses. You know, if you typically come ask me on my page, like, hey, do you know who this person is? Can I speak to this person for my podcast? I'll hit that person up and be like, do you want to go talk to this podcast? Yes or no? And then I'll connect them if they want.
Right.
But yeah, that's usually, it's like, I usually get stonewalled by others between me and like the older veterans. And especially, I think it's like the technology kind of doesn't help, because part of me thinks I should just open up like a mailing thing, but I really don't. I have to explore that more now. Now that you kind of got me thinking about it, you know, if there's like,
well, it could have been actually, it could actually be a therapeutic, thing for, some of these veterans too. I mean, being able to talk about their experiences, things that they're not normally comfortable talking about in normal, maybe, atmospheres or, social, circumstances. So, I could see how that could be maybe a thing that would help people that, were veterans, or, the older veterans, that, be able to talk about those experiences and get them off their chest, and, being able just to, let that go sometimes. Sometimes just talking about it, helps out so much. You know what I mean?
It seems like too, as the decades go by, and I see my dad, because we worked with a lot of PTSD with my father, but the more he's opened up, because when I was younger, there was only one time he talked about Vietnam. I was a senior in high school, and he actually had video VHS footage of Vietnam that had no sound to it. But it was about 5 minutes. He showed us the machinery that they used and things, and he had a big gun. He also they painted Bertha on the side of it in yellow paint and stuff. And he shared everything, but then that's the last time he truly shared anything with us until probably I hit my 30s. And now I'm in my 40s, and he's talking more about that experiences he's had in military. But he's had paranormal occurrences over there in Vietnam, and he does write it off as being on acid and alcohol, but it's stuff that stuck with them, and it could have some meaning to it. I don't know. Sometimes there's psychedelics, MK Ultra, if we want to talk about all these conspiracies with MK Ultra and using psychedelics and things like that back in that time, it could be part of enhance something there. Yeah. But I think what you're doing, Nick's freaking awesome.
Absolutely.
Has your father ever talked about seeing the tree people in Vietnam?
I don't think so. He talks about people being in the trees. Is that the tree people?
Ask him about the tree people. I'm curious.
He said he called them snipers, but they would like kind of monkey-ish, and they would jump from tree to tree.
Snipers? Well,
he called them snipers.
Oh, maybe they might have actually been snipers jumping from tree to tree. That's terrifying.
But that's the only tree thing that he ever talked to us about. I had Melissa's on. Hey, Melissa, good to see you.
Hey, Melissa.
I had an ace pilot from World War II as a client for palliative care. After his death, I took care of his wife, and I had a very spooky experience at his house. Ooh, have you ever done stories of families that lost military people and they've come back and haunted, or try to tell stories?
Posted one or two. I've had actually quite a few sent to me that I haven't posted just out of privacy for the family. But yeah, I've definitely had stories where, they, somebody maybe sticks around for a little bit to say goodbye or make themselves known before they move on.
Chris is on here too. Drugs may activate other areas of the brain, which allows the person to see other side.
That's correct.
Yeah, I believe that absolutely. I mean, they use that in testing, and I've also said this jokingly, but I'm almost like we should use psychedelics to do paranormal investigations at some of these crazy places that are known to be around the world. There was a book I read on strange experiences from Vietnam, and there was a lot of strange things going on. Yeah, my dad tells me all kinds of stuff about Vietnam, but he doesn't really go in detail until there was a few stories that hit him. Like he physically saw this, like it was almost like a Sasquatch being, Nick.
Like a rocket.
Very large. It was very large. He couldn't tell if he was hairy or not, but it happened at night time, and he saw the shadow, and he was like trying to get it to go away, without making a big fuss. And then he said he just remembers rolling over. It finally just dissipated and he rolled over and went to sleep. I was like, I couldn't sleep after that.
Hell no.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure at that point you'd be like, yeah, like just let least of your worries.
Yeah.
I would say for Mike Harris, I hope you can remember the title of that book. I would love to read about it.
Yeah. Strange Experience from Vietnam. Yeah, I'd like to know about it too. So Mike, if you think about it, just send a message or make a comment here.
Yeah, because that reminds me. If you like a book like that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Say it again. I'm sorry.
That reminded me. If you guys want an interesting book to read, is Dream Baby by Bruce McAllister. It's a fiction book, but he interviewed. He was not in the military, but he wrote this book about people with paranormal abilities in Vietnam, and he did it by interviewing over like 200 veterans from like 3 separate wars about like the paranormal experiences they reported. And it's like super fascinating when you think about it, because even though the book is fiction, it's based off of his extensive research into people like, people that did remote viewing or saw their death before it happened, or others' deaths, or, suddenly were being shot at and were able to move almost like they were teleporting, to safety. Is super fascinating when you read the book. I highly recommend it.
Nick, before we actually went live, we were talking a little bit about some of the international, maybe other military services that are out there for different countries. Can you talk a little bit about those, maybe that you were able to maybe get some stories from, and maybe tell us a couple of those stories as well?
Yeah, I think I've spoken to mainly a lot of people in Canada, because there's some Canadian pages that I connected with on Instagram very early. But yes, so a lot of Canadian stories, a lot of stories from the British Army. I've had stories from Greece, Turkey, Pakistan, Singapore, Colombia, Mexico. I'm really having to go down and dig into the list right now.
Yeah. Any similar, similarities in the stories?
Oh yeah. There's all sorts of it's mainly like places. So like in Canada, right? There's like places like Canadian Armed Forces base Meaford, that there's this legend of Meaford Mary, kind of like your typical woman in white story over there. But all these Canadian soldiers reported seeing it. And so there's like this 2 trains of thought, like that it was the people at the training base kind of perpetuating this ghost story to mess with recruits. And then there's veteran soldiers that swear by like, no, I saw this, like either this woman in white, this little girl running around, or these blue eyes in the darkness staring at me. So it's kind of interesting because, again, like you get all these people sending you in these stories that connect, and it's very interesting.
Right. From different places as well, which is even interesting, right? Yeah. Another thing I wanted to go ahead.
I'm sorry. I even got a recent one from. I think I've even got stories from Russia, from a guy that immigrated over here, and he told me like stories from his time in Russia, seeing like ghosts in the swamp that were trying to lure a friend to his death, to even seeing the Mongolian death worm.
Mongolian death worm. What is that? Tell me about that.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. It's like a kind of like this weird legend, obviously from Mongolia, and it's about a giant worm, as the name suggests. And it's like kind of like one of those kind of kooky stories. Yeah, like Tremors. Yeah, and it like lives in the ground and has acidic blood and chases people and crazy stuff like that. And I used to think it was one of those goofy stories till he told the story. Until I read his story, and he described it as basically like a giant wood grub that lives in like the ground, and he basically saw its head like it came out of the ground and looked at him, and then whipped back under. And I was like, okay, well now when you describe it like that, it actually sounds more plausible than a giant worm running around.
Yeah.
We have a lot of cryptids. Like this first book, the Tales from the Grid Square, it kind of looks like cryptid experiences there on the cover. I love the artwork of both of your books, by the way. I don't know who does that, but they're fantastic. And so, you know, nobody ever talks about this worm as possible. Would that be classified as cryptid?
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, technically.
I mean, it makes me want to go down a rabbit hole or a sand hole.
A giant grub worm
I mean,
that's in the ground.
I mean, Dune. We got predictive programming and stuff. Maybe they're trying to tell us something we just don't know yet.
Maybe.
I don't know. Nick probably doesn't subscribe to that channel, but I do.
Oh, the predictive programming.
Yeah, predictive programming.
You know, it would make a lot of sense if people weren't so schizophrenic about it. Because there's some funny ones that I like the Simpsons one. I find interesting.
Dude, the CIA's in the Simpsons. It's all CIA.
Did a whole podcast on that, yeah.
Although I attest that to being more coincidence than nothing else, because I would always ask the same question. You know, what would be the point of doing predictive programming in The Simpsons? I haven't watched The Simpsons since I was like a child.
Oh, I still watch it.
But you could argue that there's other types of predictive programmings, like, you know, with violent video games and children's access to violent video games and the subsequent desensitization to violence.
Absolutely.
Like, I do think that maybe it has some leniency to it, but like there's some zany ones, like you know, the tragedy that happened in Hawaii recently. There's all of a sudden people were saying there were dudes that burned down Maui, and I was like, what the hell is a dew? And I looked it up, direct energy weapon, and I was like, why are people saying this? And they're like, oh, because there was Mountain Dew released a soda.
Oh no, it's not about
Baja Blast.
Baja Blast.
It was Maui Blast, and I was like, Dew. Direct energy weapon, and I was like, you guys, but it doesn't work on blue.
Well, here's the thing with that what makes it interesting with that is that there is a Dew facility in that location. There's only two. There's one there and one in New Mexico. How are they going to test these things out? There's always a test. There's always something. So that's what makes it interesting to me. But I mean, Dew that's a fun little conspiracy thing on the side, but you know, I think they do test these products out, and sadly a lot of and it's a history too that they've tested a lot of things out on people. We just haven't seen it so much in America because we've been a blessed country, but there's been a lot of stuff that's gone over in third world countries that they tested things out and destroyed people, you know. So I don't know, I question it. I always question everything, though. That's why I have a podcast, I guess.
Well,
that's right. That's right.
For the Maui thing, I was here, and the winds were so ridiculously high that day. Like it would have just been like a flamethrower, and I feel for the people that were caught there because it was
go ahead, Nick.
I was just saying the winds were so bad, I almost got blown away a couple times.
Well, I'll tell you this. I posted a dream I had about Hawaii January of last year, and I heard screaming. I posted it, woke me up out of my dream, and I was crying so bad. And I just felt shortness of breath. I couldn't breathe from this dream, and I saw smoke. The clouds was so dark, I couldn't tell what was going on. It sounded like a lot of helicopters or airplanes, and I kept hearing people screaming. And I saw a sign that says "This way to Hawaii," and I heard them saying they're doing it again. They're doing it again. So I thought maybe World War II reference to that. I don't know what they're doing it again to this day. But when I heard the winds on some of these videos, and it felt like it was heat. It felt so hot. And I said in my post in January of last year, in my post, I said it felt like a volcano erupted. It was so hot in my dream. And then 8 months later, that happened. So I still don't know if they're doing it again. I don't know what that means. But, you know, I had that dream. It's kind of eerie. That happened.
What you said that was January of
last year, 2023.
I was gonna say if it was January 2020 or 2018, you would have been like right on track to the last big eruption.
Oh well, it felt like, and then in what I thought was airplanes, because I described it sounded like airplanes in the air. It actually, when I started hearing or seeing these videos on TikTok, it was the wind. It was It was the wind, is what I heard. But Tales from the Grid Square Volume 2, you have the triangle spacecraft alien. So let's switch over a little bit about some possible alien UFO encounters with the military.
Oh yeah, so both books have a pretty good mix of like cryptid, ghost, and UFO stories. I would say I get a lot more UFO stories, I think, than I do like ghost stories, and they're all along the same vein. Like I saw three lights in the sky in a triangular shape, or I saw lights that were doing maneuvers that made no sense, that no drone or aircraft could do. So there's quite a bit. I've actually, and I think I've posted, and they're in the book too, pictures of UFOs captured over bases in Afghanistan. I have two actually. I have one that was a triangular, like 3 lights in a triangular formation that you could only see under NVGs. So
what's that? Real quick, what does that mean?
Night vision goggles.
Okay.
So
all right.
Night vision goggles, modern night vision goggles use a passive means to filter the ambient light from stars and other sources and infrared lights through the goggles so you can see at night. And so some things, like there's like, say, chem lights, certain like little, like the chemical crack full of lights, and you shake them up and they light up. So there's like some of those that to the naked eye you can't see it doing anything, but under NVGs you could see it's emitting an infrared light. And so in the sky over this base, this a highly secured, very large base in Afghanistan, you see like these 3 lights over the base slowly drifting over, and then moving off into the horizon out of sight. So it's kind of interesting. It was like, what if these were aircraft, how come they weren't detected over this? Could they have been detected at all? I have another almost exact same triangular configuration from a Canadian soldier on patrol, and he basically captured these lights, same thing, under NVGs when he was in a observation post floating over the river, and you can actually see the lights are being reflected in the river that it's floating over.
So with military technology and things, do you think that could possibly be advanced technology that we just don't know about yet? Maybe.
That is always a very distinct possibility, especially when you look back in history and the history of like our own development, like, the stealth fighter doesn't look like a real aircraft. Probably back then, like, and like when it came out, people forget like that came out like in the 80s, and that was considered like insane science at the time. I can only imagine what's out there now, and like the government has only just gotten better about hiding these things. Like Area 51 is not where anything happens anymore, probably.
No,
because everybody knows where Area 51's at. But yeah.
I always say when they release stuff and show it to us as a public, even the CIA, if they release documents so we can learn, they have already surpassed this and they're way on to something else, is what I've always said. With this technology, who knows what they have in other countries? And this goes down the conspiracy pipeline of Tesla and free energy and all that they possibly may have those documents and we just don't know about, or Tartarian Empire and all that, which we've talked on this show about. But compared, and we'll follow up after this, compared to paranormal and UFO incidences in the military, what outweighs the other? Do you get more UFO? Do you get more paranormal?
I would say I probably get more UFO. I would say that's probably like number 1, followed by like haunting type scenarios, and then like kind of cryptid stories in that order. I think the UFO stories are the more prevalent ones, which, you could also just associate to maybe misidentification. Maybe it is.
Or drones? Could it be drones?
Yeah, because like if like the drones the army uses, like some of them fly over 10,000 feet. Like if you look up, you'll just see these like vague lights circling the sky. And like, if you didn't know what it was, you would be like, oh, that's a weird UFO. But then again, where I live, there's also all sorts of unidentified flying objects seen off the west side of Oahu. It's kind of like a low key thing here, but a lot of people have reported seeing strange things coming from the sky and out of the ocean on the west side. So who knows? Like it could, it's really hard to tell. But yeah, to your point, like some of it could just be like, if you've ever seen like a B-2 bomber coming into land, the way they're set up, it looks like a triangle UFO.
Yep, sure does. Yeah. Nick, one thing I wanted to ask you is, you collecting all these stories and everything, which I think is great. I mean, it's I think is a good thing. But one thing I wanted to ask was, when you collect these stories, is there maybe any stories that you feel like it's too much for you to put out there? Like it's just like, okay, it's either too personal for that person. You're like, I can't do that, or maybe yeah.
There's been a few. They're either very personal to that individual, and it would kind of like, if they wanted to remain anonymous, it like wouldn't be hard to track that individual down. There have been stories where I've like hovered over, because some of them deal with like, kind of mature content, like some violence or other kind of stuff like that.
Demon possession.
I actually haven't. Yeah. There have been stories that I have been chasing that I have heard of that I've never got full on ones. Not like, I would say things I wouldn't post would be of extreme personal nature to someone, or to something that is like a very probably a very violent depiction of like war, that maybe like maybe this wouldn't be a good one to post,
right?
But more often than not, that's only been like maybe 2 or 3 stories that I was like, this is maybe a little too graphic for people to see. Only just the majority have been like, these sound very personal, and I don't really want to, for the sake of entertainment, put this out there.
Yeah, I get it. Another thing I wanted to ask you, Nick, is you have all these haunted places where battles have been fought. We talk about Gettysburg so much and stuff like that. Obviously you can't talk to any of those soldiers that were there, obviously, and get their perspective, but you could probably talk to some of the people that work in those areas still to this day and maybe get a perspective. Is there any place where you have an itch to go, maybe investigate and maybe talk to some of the people there that are still maybe tending to the grounds of some place like that?
Oh, for sure. Like off the bat, I would love to go to Gettysburg. I visited one time for work business, so I really couldn't get into this is before I started the page, but I did ask like some of the tour guys, because there's like some famous ghost tours down there, and all of them swore that there's locations you could go to where you would experience things. I spoke to one individual who's a park ranger, and they're like, yeah, just don't go into the park at night. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And he's just like, it's just like nothing good will happen if you go into the park at night. And Gettysburg itself is super eerie as well. Also, coincidentally, it was a POW camp during World War II. So if you want, there's a store you can buy a full-on SS uniform, because it was German POWs there. And they would sell their stuff out in town to get like favors and crap like that. Yeah, so there's a lot of military history, and also apparently that's where one of the few places where they were able to keep Japanese POWs. But they would have to basically keep them like in an asylum, because due to the times, they would try to kill themselves, Oh,
wow.
Yeah, pretty creepy stuff. But anyways, I digress. I have, not myself personally, but I know people that have visited Gettysburg and actually got some weird stuff on video and pictures of what looks like, soldiers, like Union or Confederate soldiers marching around. So like, definitely a place I would love to go,
Just FYI, Gettysburg's about 4 hours from me, so it's not that far. If you go, Nick, let me know. I promise I won't expose your identity.
Oh, no, yeah. I would love to go as soon as I get back to the mainland. That's like one of the places. I mean, like, in terms of like military spots, I mean, Gettysburg, because that's like one of the most famous. There's other like military bases I would love to go like do my own like paranormal investigation around. But it's something that a guy walking out with a camera in the middle of the night, probably wouldn't be too highly upon on a military base, I probably have someone come up to me and be like, "What are you doing?"
Right. Yeah.
Well, here's a question since we're talking about Gettysburg. There's two famous forts in the state of Kentucky because that's where I live. We have Fort Campbell and Fort Knox. Any stories, and sorry, I'm just going to admit, I haven't bought your books yet. I am going to, though, after tonight. I'm definitely going to be buying them. I promise I will do it this evening. But any stories from anybody from Fort Campbell, Fort Knox?
Oh, plenty. Fort Knox is, I get a lot of stories over there of like, what would you call them? Ghouls or
Gremlins?
Gremlin, maybe? I don't know what you want to call them. The little
my grandmother used to call them gremlins. My grandmother used to call them gremlins.
I don't know what they're called, but if I ever see one in real life, I'll blow it away.
Or not gremlins. I'm sorry, goblins. She called them the goblins.
The goblins.
Pale creatures that look like humans walking around on all fours.
Don't feed them after midnight.
Yeah. There's people that have reported seeing something like that, like staring at them behind trees and crawling around in the night. So that's creepy. Fort Campbell is actually, there's a lot of paranormal activity on Fort Campbell. It was one of the stops on the Trail of Tears before it became Fort Campbell. There was another fort, like a small frontier fort there. And it was one of the stops on the Trail of Tears. And so there's a lot of soldiers.
Paranormal? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It cut out there for a second.
Oh, no worries. Well, I guess it depends on your train of thought. So a lot of people do report ghosts. There's actually literally a road called Ghost Trail there, where people see all sorts of stuff and weird stuff in the woods and like shadow figures. And there's a lot of people that report seeing Dogman there.
Oh yeah, we got Dogman and we got Goatman too in Kentucky.
Yeah, the famous Kentucky Goatman.
Goatman, yeah.
I wonder if the Goatman's real. That'd be kind of interesting.
I wonder if all of these creatures are real. I think I saw a cryptid once in the mountains of Hazard, Kentucky.
Oh, do tell.
It is. Well, gosh, this was several years ago, or about 3 years ago. I was with the group Appalachian Unknown. Brent, you know Brent Will.
Yeah, Brent here, right?
Yes, and we were down in the. I thought he was taking me to a place he was just going to kill me off. I was like, this is it. I swear it looks like a Friday the 13th scene. There's a cabin and stuff there. It's the hills of Appalachia. And what happened, there's a family graveyard there. And we had everything was completely charged. And there was about 5 or 6 of us total. And we had all of our lights on. It's dark. It's nighttime. And we're walking halfway down this path in between this graveyard and then we heard something over in the woods. I was like, oh, it's just an animal or something like that. So we're walking about 50, 75 feet away from the graveyard. And I turned around and the girl that was with me, Chelsea, she turned around. We both saw it at the same time. It was very low to the ground, but it was as long as almost an alligator, I would say. It was furry, had a very long tail. It was absolutely white as can be, and it just scurried across the road really fast. People heard it, but Chelsea and I saw it. Me and her gasped at the same time. All of our batteries in our lights, our cameras, everything shut down, and like it freaked me out. Hold on, I'm going to tell you what it was because I found out somebody wrote about it.
Huh.
I just talked about this not too long ago, and I sent a picture of it to the person. It's White Things, West Virginia's Weird White Monsters by Kurt McCoy, and he writes about this white. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like the Alabama wet thing?
I don't know. It's and this always seen near graveyards too. Where he talks about it, white things. This is what it looked like. I promise. I mean, I couldn't see the face, but see how the tail is? It's very long. Right. Kind of looked like an alligator. It probably stood up off the ground as much as like a fox. We saw that in Hazard, Kentucky. I swear to this day. And Brent, if you're watching this, he's probably not watching. He's probably listening because he's driving a truck. He can testify to it. Like it happened.
Wow, that's weird. That's interesting. Like that was probably a big animal. It
was, and it was very long. It was more long than anything.
Like an alligator.
It kind of reminded me of an alligator, and it scurried really fast, and then everything went like sucked everything out. Cameras, phone, lights, everything was gone.
Creepy.
It was.
It looks like I'm going down the rabbit hole.
We got about 5 minutes here left with you, Nick, and we have somebody, Chris, that's watching. He's asking something. This is something that I was interested in too. So thank you, Chris, for asking. Like, we have a lot of stuff with shapeshifters and oh shoot, I just went blank.
Skinwalker
Ranch and stuff. Does anything like that pop up in military experiences?
Oh yeah, like skinwalkers are practically a meme nowadays. But there's a lot of people that see some really creepy things, like an emaciated man with deer antlers standing in the middle of the desert with glowing eyes. You know, pale humanoids peeking out behind trees. All sorts of creepy stuff. Hearing their voice like call back to them in the middle of the night. Like, oh yeah, definitely. People definitely claim to see some very not so cool things out there. It makes you really start to wonder. Some of them give me goosebumps. You know.
Yeah. Any doppelganger stories?
Yeah. That was one of those creepy ones I used to read about online, but I can't really say doppelganger stories like in the military. There's been people that have like talked about like quote unquote glitches in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Or like people that have claimed to see like soldiers like they're out in the field in the middle of the night and they see a soldier, but their uniform's all off and the soldier's acting really weird. Like, they're wearing the wrong camo pattern or their patches are all on wrong. And, they weren't expecting to get attacked by like, the people playing the bad guys.
Right.
So like I've had like 2 stories like that were really weird, but nothing like super crazy. Like the doppelganger shows itself and, it's trying to lure you away and crap like that. The really creepy stuff.
Or like if they're in combat and they run up against somebody, like, does anything ever mess with anybody while they're in active combat?
I haven't really had stories of people like getting messed with in combat. Maybe like they see like really creepy things, or like not like directly like there's like a cryptid or something like that, but like while they're in combat zones, they've seen like cryptid like things. I did have this one story he was a scout sniper in the Marine Corps, and and he was in a gunfight in Iraq, and did unfortunately kill an insurgent, and realized as they were sitting there at night that they had wounded him and he wasn't dead, and so he didn't want to he felt bad like executing him, quote, so to say. So they listened, like he died, and they listened to him die all night, and then he would start seeing, he would start feeling like somebody was choking him at night, like trying to sitting on his chest, like trying to choke him out, and he was convinced. Oh, that I'm missing a very important part. Just at night, just when they like were about to like maybe like check like see if he had died, they had heard him like give his like the death rattle, like when somebody dies, and he sat straight up. He sat straight up and looked at the guy through, and like he's like looking at him through a scope, so he's a couple of 100 meters away. And he's creepy. Like the man sat up and stared at me, not a couple 100 meters, but he's far enough away that the guy wouldn't know where he was at. And then stared at him and then died. Yeah, and then later that night, he felt like he was getting choked out in his sleep. Felt like somebody's hands were on him. He was convinced it was that man.
Yeah,
sleep paralysis.
He doesn't think so. He thinks it was that guy trying to come back and finish the job.
Yeah.
Wow.
It certainly was.
Real quick, I have one last question, then I'll have Will ask you a last question too, Nick. We appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Yeah,
I have tons of more questions, and I'm going to be buying both of your books, and I'm going to read them. And obviously, we'd love to have you come back on as a guest in the future. But so, is there going to be volume 3?
Oh yes, I'm actually working on volume 3 right now.
Okay.
It will be bigger. They'll have some stories in there I haven't posted on the page. I think I'm sitting around 320 stories. So
wow,
it'll be a pretty good chunk. So hopefully I can maintain that. I'm trying to keep it at around 300 stories. Wow. So
how many stories you put in one book, Nick? If you don't mind me asking.
I think the first one I put 230.
Oh wow!
250 was in the second book, and then the third book I just like I throw them in a file as I go through and I post them, and I was like, oh, I'm sitting around like 320 something. So,
wow, amazing.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I think, I mean, you're very popular on Instagram. I have your Instagram here at tells_from_the_grid square, all one word, if you're listening via podcast. Is there any way anybody else can reach out to you or anything, Nick, if they want to have you on as a guest? You can buy his books through Amazon too. Just look it up there, and I have the links in the description of the show. But anywhere else, Nick, that they can find you?
Oh yeah. Well, so mainly on Instagram right now. I do have a Facebook, not quite as active on there. If people want to like reach out to me or chat or whatever, the best way to do it is just to message me on my Instagram page directly, or they can send an email, which is just talesfromthegridsquare, all one word, @gmail.com. And I'll usually respond, or if you want to share. And so if people are listening that have stories, like email or like message me on the page, best way to reach me. Or honestly, I also collect people. I eventually will release a volume that is non-military stories, because for every military story I may get like 3 that are from non-military, like people, or they just don't quite fit in with the theme. So go ahead and send it to me. I'm eventually gonna try to put that one together and release it in a big anthology, or maybe 2 like ghosts and UFOs and cryptids in another one, or something like that. Something to do something different. But yes, there will be as many books as I can make.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for all the hard work. Yes, looking forward to it. Thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for your service in the military. We appreciate you very much. And hopefully we'll see you again here on What the Frick. We'll let you go and we'll close out the show, and have a great weekend. And thank you so much for everything that you do, Nick. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Nick.
Awesome. No, thank you for having me on. I really
have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you, Nick.
There we go. Nick Orton. Tales from the Grid Square. Yeah. I still have so many more questions. Why do I always do that?
Well, an hour is just sometimes not enough, especially with a guest like this. I mean, I'm sure he's got. I mean, we're talking about over 200, different stories in a book. I mean, and he already has 2 volumes. He's coming out with a third one. So, I mean, I'm sure he has so many stories that we could just talk about.
Yeah, and then like what does he enjoy most, like putting it together? Because he has to put it together in story form. I want to see what his mind frame is like when he goes into this, and how he organizes everything. And then also, we touched a little bit on it, didn't ask a question, but like voice of God technology in the military, does that not have a play or a role in these military hauntings or experiences that they have? Hey, Julie, we're getting ready to close out. So good to see you. But that was awesome and amazing. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please share out the show. Give us a thumbs up or a like on Rumble if you're watching via Rumble. That helps our show. And on YouTube too. I don't really market YouTube that much, but please give us a thumbs up over there. Thank you so much. We will be back here next week. Next month is True Crime Month. We got some doozies. Nice. But we're going to be here next week with Melissa, because we're going to go back into Ted Bundy and the CIA and the connections of some of these serial killers with Norfolk Island and the Bushes. We're going to be talking about that a little bit next week in True Crime. But we have I'm a Daughter of a Murder Mother coming on this month, and we have some good shows coming on True Crime Month in May. But stay tuned, because it's a double header tonight. Unfortunately, Will won't be able to join us at 9 because he has to record for Dark Fringe Radio. But
I apologize.
It's okay. We're gonna have Josh and Dilla on. We're gonna be talking about deep sea ocean water haunts in Florida.
I want to talk about that. Yes,
we'll have him on Dark Fringe. Fringe. We'll be back here live again at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week too. If you're not joining in tonight, we'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Melissa, Ted Bundy, and
the CIA
connections. Here we go. Thank you, everybody.